for your kind introduction. Welcome, Nina and Gary. Your presence really means a lot. There's a favorite saying that for every successful man, there is a woman behind him. But in my life, when I started in IRRI, there were more men behind me who supported me. I will never forget Dr. Edwin Price. I just accompanied my husband to IRRI because he was doing his PhD. I tagged along with him because I wanted to see IRRI. And then when he interviewed me, Dr. Edwin Price said, "Do you want to start tomorrow?" And I was then 7 months pregnant. So I said, wow, I got a job in IRRI. And from then on, I never left IRRI. Now, I never thought that I would write a book. I computed my age at that time. I was 37 when I worked with Dr. Hela Castillo. That was 1985. And she accepted a job in IRRI, or an assignment, not a job, as a visiting scientist in social science division, to lead the Women in Rice Farming Systems Network. I never knew her. I only knew Dr. Hela Castillo as a very elegant lady and a patient of my mom. She used to wait and wait in her clinic, and I used to give her a lot of magazines to keep her busy and occupied. But she never complained. And I thought, what an elegant lady. And I never thought that there would be a day when I would have the opportunity to work with her. And then I found out I looked at her, Sylvia, she was a journalist. She majored in journalism. And then I was so embarrassed, so I told her, I was so scared, "Mom, I'm not a good writer." And I was so, and you know what she said? She said, "Don't worry about it. Just write what you see, you write what you hear, and then that will be the problem of the editor." So the first time that I was invited in Thailand to give my work, Dr. Hela Castillo, she was the one who was invited. And she said, "Don't invite me, invite Thelma Paris." And that's the kind of lady she was. So now, when she left, as Leo said, I felt bad that I lost my inspiration. But then I could always listen to her. I went through the compilation of her notes. I keep all her notes, scattered little notes during my birthdays. One note saying, "Don't forget where you came from." And then I asked so what would be the best message from Dr. Helia that would be the tribute for my book? And as all of you know, that Helia was the pioneer of Filipino women in rice-based agriculture. And this is what she said. In many instances, it is probably fair to say that women at work in agriculture are physically visible. That means if you go to the field, they work day and night during wet and dry season, but still they are invisible to those people who see them, because they are invisible in the statistics. Because the farmers are men, and they are only culturally perceived as housewives. So they are invisible even to those who actually see them. Fortunately, the visibility is improving, and I hope it is. And therefore, the research that we do must go beyond being sensitizing. That means let us go beyond gender analysis. Let's do something for them. research must be operationally significant. It must indicate to someone, and that someone can be a plant breeder, can be a weed specialist, can be an agriculture engineer. Anybody who is responsible for policy, like Val Pérez, my colleague, one of the authors, is an economist. Program development and implementation, a more precise definition of the problem so that it would lend itself to feasible solutions. What a wonderful message for this book. And I'm sure that Dr. Hela Castillo will be very proud that her advocacy will never stop and it will continue will be continued by the future generation. Leo mentioned that at the beginning it was not easy because there were so many papers written on gender dimension, but not in Southeast Asia. All of them, or most of them, were conducted in Africa, in South Asia, where the situation is very different from Southeast Asia. So they portray the women as victims of climate change, as oppressed, illiterate, it makes you feel that what's going on here? So that really pushed me to write something about women in agriculture, particularly in Southeast Asia. One thing that I'm proud of this book is that it is not only written by social scientists. If you look at the contributors, it is a teamwork. We have Rainer Wasman. He is an expert on climate change. We have Balpede, social economist. We have economists, social scientists. We have NGOs from IRRI. We have economist Judy Vasconcelos is here. So it is also, most of the authors are also Asians. But the review of literature all came from Africa and South Asia. And also the problem I encountered in reviewing the literature is that they keep on repeating the same, it's like a litany, saying the same things, but no evidence. No evidence. But you see, when a Filipino or South Asian writer, nobody believes if you don't have data. So that's also another challenge. How can we make visible, the women visible, by getting data, but not necessarily getting a lot of money? Leo doesn't really need a lot of money, not like Bill and Melinda Gates. But one thing that Leo has done is that he encouraged young MS students and PhD students to do gender analysis. And Rainer was also one of them who encouraged the PhD student to really, although she is an economist, she also looked into the gender nest to really study. So this project, this book, The Gender Dimension in Agriculture, is, my co-author is Faye Rolla, who also was my colleague in writing many studies like migration in Southeast Asia and so forth. I don't think you can understand this diagram, but we cannot talk about gender issues in relation to climate change if we don't examine this framework. If you know Dr. Randy Barker, he always whisper and ask me, what is the connection of climate change and gender? So he was looking at a direct connection. And then this is how I explain it. We all know that there's climate change. People are aware that there are changes in patterns, high temperature, we experience drought, floods, and weather is no longer, the patterns are no longer predictable. And because of this lead to crops, particularly rice, and also decline in livestock, in aquaculture, and of course, environmental degradation. But all of this affect livelihood. So when Glenn explained, I was in India, and then there was a big conference on crop sort of physiology under stress environment. And they asked me if I can give a talk. I said no, because I don't see any relation. And then he said, who suffers when there's drought? Women, because they have to wait more than 20 days just to plant the seedlings. Women, because they don't have any fodder for the animals. So it's all, so then I gave a talk and that opened doors for my PhD thesis. So the human dimension is so strong and has a direct connection to climate change. But then, when we look at the human element, we always have to examine the differences between men and women because the perceptions, their roles and responsibilities vary. And we also, since we're working under the CGIAR, we also have to link see in what ways people who are suffering from stress can have resilience if they adopt climate-smart agriculture. So there are many ways to intervene to make their lives better. So when you look at the framework, this is also the same framework, which, if you look at the chapters, there are 4 themes. The first thing is looking or examining what's going on, or looking into the context in Vietnam, in the Philippines, and so forth. And then followed by linking those gender roles with climate-smart agriculture. But there are 2 important aspects of the book. And these are examples of efforts for enhancing the capacities of rural women, including participatory variety selection, seed selection, and so forth. And the last is the community-based participatory action research. So I have to go through this because it is important to know what is gender. So it is just a socially constructed characteristics of men and women, because we know that the way we behave are all, these are norms, roles, and relationships between groups of men and women, but gender roles are dynamic. They change due to many factors like education, migration, introduction of technologies, and so forth. And we have also to understand that women see or view the world differently than men. And they have different interests and sometimes conflicting interests. So policies and programs do not affect men and women in the same way, and we have to understand this. And sustained commitment is necessary. And I'm glad the CGIAR or CIRCA will continue to be committed to this endeavor. So since this is a research, we're dealing with research, we have to ask the right questions. What are the climate change risks? Do men and women have the same perceptions? Many of the studies in Africa and South Asia say that men and women have different perceptions, but not in this book. Not all, because since women are engaged in agriculture and they work with men in the field, so they also have the same perception and experience. But the impact of these negative effects of climate change may vary, because women see the impact as a decline in or high production costs because they manage the money. But the men are saying that, oh, we suffer from, we don't have more yields or we lost the crop. So there are different perceptions in the way they see the impacts of these negative consequences of climate change. The first thing that we have to do is look into the sources of livelihood. So all who are responsible for rice, for other crops, for livestock, who makes the decision, and when drought or floods occur, who lives or migrate to the city, and who are left behind to take over men's responsibilities. What are the coping mechanisms of men and women who are affected by drought or floods? And what are the opportunities? And these are the most important in the book. Is which of the CSA will benefit men and women? The youth from poor farming communities who are also vulnerable to climate change risks? And what are the enabling and constraining factors affecting the adaptation, and scaling out of CSA? So those research questions were also dealt with in this book. So we have many case studies in the Climate Smart Climate Village CSV in Vietnam, in Phylum, and in the Philippines. And what is also interesting is that we did give them one model or a blanket method of analysis. Said, no, it's up to you, depending on your budget. Go to the field and ask questions. Do qualitative methods, quantitative methods. And it's quite interesting to see how a simple cropping calendar can give a lot of story. And you can read that in the paper of Arma Bertuzzo. The role of root crops as a survival crop in upland communities in eastern Visayas, which suffer, when the people suffer from typhoons and so forth. Now, the other social scientists and other disciplines say, well, these are all stories. So we're a statistical analysis. Here's this kappa, all these statistical analysis are here. Simple t-test, chi-square, whatever. But you need to be able to explain, because just making simple analysis do not make sense. And what is also interesting is that we don't just give training. Miss Chi in Vietnam did a technical knowledge test before and after training these men and women on improved crop resource management. And the last is, okay, you have done good gender analysis, so what? What have you done to women? Have you really helped them? I went to Ginayan in Quezon. And it's quite interesting that this group of women manage a community savings group. And they're taking care of this, or they're managing local native breeds of pigs, which generated income to them. And so it opened doors for more income opportunities. Now, when we say we want to make women's visible in statistics, it is not that easy. Because women themselves underestimate their role. When you say, do you work? No, I don't work. I'm just a housewife. So you would think that she's not doing anything, sleeping, watching TV. So the woman would say, well, we don't work, we just stay at home and fetch the water, find the firewood, look for after the kettle, prepare the lunch, and then, so that's not work. So that is why we have a system, methodology, particularly the economists, to measure the time spent in the different operations in rice production, so that we can make comparable labor statistics. So what are the key findings? Because it is not easy to synthesize because of the differences in the context. But then I have a few key findings which are different from the other studies. Now, when you ask a farmer, can you define climate change? well, we have not even heard climate change. We know that every day we suffer from extreme climate variability. We have floods, and then all the seedlings are taken away by the floods. We have drought, typhoons, and these are very difficult to predict. So that's the difference. Before it was easy to predict, but now, who knows? Tomorrow we'll have lots of rainfall, drought, and so forth. Farmer communities are more resilient in typhoon-prone areas due to the production of root crops and tubers. Now, coming from IRRI, I thought, wow, farmers should grow rice, because rice we need rice for food security, income, and so forth. But roots and tubers and other crops are just as important. In an economy dominated by crops that are vulnerable to climate change, small livestock production presents a least risk-prone livelihood venture. And livestock is not given importance at all. Men and women have similar perceptions, but the impacts may vary, and coping strategies vary between men and women when distinctions are made at farm and household level. Many of the stories we don't get through from formal questionnaires, from stories. Because when we ask, how did you manage? I said, well, the woman will say, I have my other pocket. I have savings. So during times of stress, the savings are used up. And gender roles change. And this is this is taken from the work of Berlin Tatlong. Women are spending less, using savings. In fact, the studies also show that they eat less. So the women have the main responsibilities to adjust to all these negative consequences of climate change. Also, women are now taking over the roles that men do. For example, here in Nueva the women now they have this interesting car they sell, and they drive motorcycle. Before, you cannot see this anymore. And in Thailand and Vietnam, the women are a female-headed household, operating the tractor and also applying pesticides. So gender roles change, not only because of climate change, but because of climate change, the men leave, and therefore they have to do the responsibilities that were done by men. So the lessons to consider in technology adoption and adaptation, and this is for the scientists, agriculture extension workers, policy makers, is that when we do a study, we don't generalize that women are victims, that women in rice farming are displaced by machinery and so forth. We need to understand the context, because women are also not homogeneous. There are women who suffer more because of the displacement of labor-saving technology, and there are women who enjoy life because they don't have to suffer the drudgery. Technology is just not gender neutral. Gender roles are changing, so we have to understand this. And we need to engage women and men in technology design. Let's not underestimate their potential skills. So the last message is that we need to change our attitude and perception that saying that women are victims of climate change. In areas with disadvantaged areas or in areas where the women don't have assets and access to resources, they may be victims. But then we have to be open-minded that they are still capable to transform into agents of climate-smart agriculture options. There's hope, and this transformation can be achieved once women gain access to information. Because once you give a woman access to information, then she becomes empowered in making sound decision. She participates more in decision making. Services and resources, and also in other income generating activities. So it is important to empower women to maximize their skills, talents, and inputs, because she will not only be the beneficiary, but the whole society will benefit from all these efforts, including the future generation. So I would like to thank all those who contributed to this book, because it is not only my effort. And Dr. Helia, we love you, and I'm sure you'll be smiling up there to say that I'm glad that you were able to finish this. And thank you so much.